ESPN's Buster Olney is about to do an interview with us and then grab his suitcase and head to the airport to fly to L.A. for Game 1 of Dodgers-Yankees. I don't know many people, if any, that love baseball more than this guy, so I just can't imagine, Buster, how excited you get to be at World Series games.
Man, and especially this one, a fun conversation because you have two historic franchises who haven't played in the World Series in 43 years. And all the stars in this one. A fun exercise is to try to count up the number of future Hall of Famers in this World Series. And think about this. About 20% of the players between these two teams might wind up making a speech in Cooperstown, right? I mean, Kershaw, if you want to include him, he's not going to play in this series, but he'll be there. He's present. He's a big part of the Dodger team, injured right now. Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Ohtani is going to get in someday. Judge, Juan Soto, Giancarlo, Garrett Cole. I think Will Smith is on a trajectory. Could get him. I mean, just on and on. It's really remarkable how many stars are in this thing. The first time ever that each of the contending teams in a World Series has a 50 home run hitter. It is going to be so much fun.
90% of the players you mentioned, position players. With that said, if both offenses play up to their capability, if both is blow it out of the water, which we could see maybe, 2018 Dodgers-Astros-like series. Now, we know the Astros, they had the signs on the other side, so maybe that led to a lot of that. But who does have the advantage if both offenses are completely having their A game?
Dodgers. They have a deep lineup. I was talking yesterday with Mike Schilt, the Padres manager, and he said, when you're managing against the Dodgers, they just keep coming at you. I mean, and Freddie Freeman is saying he feels like he's going to be good to go in the World Series. So you got Ohtani and you got Mookie and you got Freddie, and you also have Will Smith and you have Max Muncy, who's had great plate appearances in this postseason. Tommy Edman was just named NLCS. From top to bottom, their offense is tremendous. As you know, I mean, most of the time this year when we get to the World Series, the conversation is about the pitching because pitching typically dominates in the postseason. But the Dodgers have been able to overcome their lack of starting pitching in this postseason because of the margin for error created by this offense. In 6 games, the National League Championship Series, 46 runs, almost 8 runs a game. That's crazy. Now, the Yankees have a really good offense. I don't think it's as great as the Dodger offense, but when you have postseason Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge, Juan Soto at the core of it, Gleyber Torres is hitting better. He's had some really great plate appearances. Anthony Volpe swinging the bat well. A key guy for me is going to be Jazz Chisholm. Like, they're going to need him to contribute something if they can go pound for pound with this Dodger offense.
We lose Fernando Valenzuela, and back to that when he was 20 years old, this rivalry was such a big part of that era, and now he passes before this series starts. Is Major League Baseball going to honor him in this series, and what do you remember about Fernando at the age of 20?
Yeah, so Rob Manfred has announced that they will honor him. It's not a surprise. I'm sure they'll have a moment of silence. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Dodgers have some sort of a decal added to their uniforms with his number 34. Look, I grew up, I've told you guys before, I grew up a huge Dodger fan. And Fernando was part of that team that broke through for me. And I don't think that there's been anything that in baseball in the time I've covered it that could match his beginning of the 1981 season where, and this is back in the days before social media and Twitter, and you're wondering as he, throws a shutout on opening day for the Dodgers in his next start, well, can he keep it going? And he could. Shutout after shutout after shutout at the beginning of the year through 8 starts, 8-0 with a 0.50 ERA. And Dodger Stadium filling up. And he was, had such a presence because he had that unusual delivery, left-hander who would stare at the heavens at the apex of each of his delivery, throwing that screwball at a time when starting pitchers are throwing 140, 150 pitches per game. I mean, he really, he inspired a generation of fans. I think like very few players have. Ohtani. It feels like Ohtani is an heir apparent to the type of legacy that the Fernando Valenzuela was a big part of.
ESPN's Buster Olney on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Who's your guy's name with the jugs guy behind the plate, Lance?
Mike Burrito.
Mike Burrito. He was the guy that Lance tells me filmed Fernando Valenzuela. Fernando. I don't know why I can't say his name.
Yeah, he did. When Fernando was 18 years old, he Mike Burrito was a scout. He always has behind home plate. You could always recognize him because he had that big cigar as he held up the radar gun. He saw Fernando when he was 18 years old. The Dodgers wind up signing him. He pitched in relief at the end of the 1980 season. He was terrific. And in 1981, Fernando was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. And in that year ends with him pitching in a World Series game, Game 3, 147 pitches, 9 hits, 7 walks allowed, complete game. I mean, the game is so different from when it was back then in terms of how relievers and starting pitchers are used. And Fernando he had 1 year, 20 complete games.
Wow.
I mean, he was incredible.
In Game 1, you've got 2 SoCal natives getting the start. You mentioned Garrett Cole, a future Hall of Famer, but Jack Flaherty. And just talk about Jack Flaherty and where his career is, because such a really good frontline starter for the Cardinals for all those years, and then bounces around Detroit to the Tigers, gets the deal in the offseason for the Dodgers. And without Flaherty, the Dodgers aren't in this spot.
That's right. And at this time, I mean, the Dodgers at the beginning of the postseason, they only had really 3 healthy starters available to them. Jack and Yamamoto and Walker Buehler. And that's it, in a bunch of relievers. And, Jack's had some good games in the postseason. He's had some games where he hasn't pitched very well. He got lit up by the Mets the last time. I think what's really interesting about this, and Brian Cashman, the Yankees general manager, his ears will be burning during that Game 1 start, because at the trade deadline, the Yankees had a deal arranged for Jack Flaherty, but they called it off when they looked at his physicals. There was something about his back that made them walk away from that deal. So if Jack Flaherty pitches well, man, Brian Cashman is going to get some criticism, for calling off that deal. And if he pitches poorly, then I'm sure that on the Yankee side, they'll feel somewhat justified in that decision. I have no idea what he's going to bring to the table. And I'll be honest, I have no idea what Garrett Cole's going to bring to the table. There have been times in his career when Garrett Cole is the best pitcher on the planet, and there have been other times in big games when he's really not come up big. They had a playoff game at Fenway Park a few years ago. He pitched terrible. I don't think he got through the 4th inning. So, you're talking about 2 pitchers with a lot on the line as they take them out in Game 1.
Who gets the credit for rebuilding this Yankees bullpen? I was reading on your site, ESPN.com, about Weaver, Cousins, and Hill, and they did not have a good resume. They were waivers, releases, and a White Sox.
Yeah, that's right. And I'd say this, the Yankees have gotten criticism for different things that they necessarily haven't done well. The one consistent thread over the last 15 years is they have consistently built really good bullpens. They clearly have a knack for identifying guys and then building with them. They have, they have put together some excellent bullpens in recent years. But I also think, and I talked to Brian Cashman the other day in the dugout in Cleveland, he fully acknowledges, like, Luke Weaver was not someone that they looked at as being, we're going to get a guy who might close out Game 7 of the World Series for us. He was kind of a journeyman, and they changed his delivery a little bit, and they changed the way he threw his fastball. And if you talk to Luke Weaver, to me, has like the perfect personality to be a closer, because he always has this look on his face like, can you believe him in the World Series? Can you I can't believe it. And he's this slender guy at a time when, pitchers are monsters. They're 6'5" and 6'6", and he's like 6 feet, and it looks like if he jumped into the water, it'd be 180 pounds soaking wet. And I think he kind of thinks it's just a really cool event, and he's having so much fun.
So a 2-part question, or a multifaceted question, however you want to look at it, Buster. I am assuming, being the Yankees manager, it's judged by world championships for Aaron Boone, right? I mean, you can win all the games you want, but if you're not hanging, getting a ring, hanging a banner, whatever it is, it's a failure. I think it's probably the same way for the Dodgers, and I don't know, Dave Roberts, how much credit he gets for that COVID-shortened world championship. So I guess right. I set that up, and I'm assuming I'm correct in both those assumptions. Of the managers, which one does this feel bigger for?
I think it's bigger for Aaron Boone because he is an option. He's not under contract right now for next year.
Oh, wow.
And coming into this year, the question was, would the Yankees advance far enough? I believe that both managers getting to the World Series is going to check a box. Like, I think Aaron Boone, who's very well liked by Hal Steinbrenner, the owner, very liked and respected by Brian Cashman, I think he's going to get an extension either way. But these are both managers because of, they're leading these two monster teams with the $300 million payrolls, that they are both vulnerable to the Grady Little moment. Okay, that's the name of the manager of the Red Sox in 2003 who left Pedro Martinez in the game, and it led to, talk radio mayhem. And within 2 days after they were eliminated, he was fired by the Red Sox. I don't think that'll happen for either Aaron Boone or Dave Roberts, but let's say there's a colossal managerial mistake. I guess it would be possible because the mob will be coming for either one of these guys if there's a moment like that in the World Series.
Yeah, this is going to blow because we discussed this yesterday. I just Googled what Aaron Boone makes as the Yankees manager, and the estimation is around $3 million. We discovered the other day that the East Carolina head football coach made, what,
$2.3 million at East Carolina University.
We've talked about these salaries before, and you mentioned Craig Counsell and what he was able to get going to the Cubs. But outside of that, you just don't see managers making a lot of money.
No, and it really reflects the change in power. I mean, when we were all growing up as kids, the manager was the field general. He was the most powerful person in the organization. But now, the comparison I make, and I really don't mean this, I don't want to get into political conversation here. I want to make that clear. I think the managers currently have power that's similar to being like the White House spokesperson. Okay, they're oftentimes not the ones who are making the biggest decision. They are the face of the franchise because they get in front of the media twice a day. The real power is held by the general managers. That is definitely the case with the Yankees and the Dodgers. Andrew Friedman and Brian Cashman are the real powers. But I do think with Counsell's contract last year, Alex Cora's contract getting $7.25 million in his extension with the Red Sox, you're going to see those numbers start to push up. And David Roberts, who has 1 year left on his contract, Aaron Boone, as I mentioned, he's going to be in line for an extension after this year. They will help to push those numbers.
All right. For the first time, we're not going to have the awkward goodbye to Buster, because normally in this interview, if it's a World Series sweep, we have to do the Buster, if you're not back with us, we really enjoy it. But we're guaranteed at least a Wednesday game, so you could come back on next Wednesday. I know Thursday's your normal day, but we could do next Wednesday, right?
I can't wait. I'll be in New York probably either way.
Okay. All right. So either way, we've got Buster next week, so we don't have to do the awkward goodbye, and I am thankful for that. It's always so awkward. Buster, enjoy the World Series. We'll see you next week.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Always fun.
All right, buddy. Take care. That is Buster Olney of ESPN with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.